What's up, everybody? Waiting for nextyear.com podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lindell, and I'm going to be talking to our old friend Harv about the Browns and the Cavs and Indians and pretty much anything else you can think about. Before we get there, Patreon. We are trying very hard to do all the things that you want us to do, that you like us to do. We need your help. You don't have to do it, but if you can support, give us your support and help. Go on to patreon.com/WFNY, patreon.com/WFNY. Pick a level and give us some love, some financial love, just a little bit, even $1, whatever. It would help. We appreciate it very much. I'm going to dial up Harv.
Waiting for next year.
On the other end of the line is Harv. How's it going, sir?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing well. There's some background noise potential in my house because it's summertime and my kids are still up, and so there could be like that sound coming through the ceiling. And I noticed when I clicked the little button there, I could hear some birds chirping and whatever else, but I think yours adds some nice ambiance to the podcast.
Especially the neighbor who's starting to mow his lawn at 8:28 p.m. That's always nice.
You know, this time of year, do you even blame somebody for mowing at 8:28?
Nope.
It's just nice to be outside.
Nope, it's cooling down. I just think it's funny, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So that's actually, we'll get to Cleveland sports and obviously the Cavaliers and the Browns specifically, but I wanted to start there. I was listening to the most recent Bill Simmons podcast. He had Kevin Durant on, and I think it's safe to say that Bill Simmons makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on his podcast. And yet I got to ride the volume button. He's overloading the crap out of his microphones. I know we're far from perfect on this podcast, and I've made some mistakes. But, like, give me half of his budget, and there's no way my podcast would ever sound as bad as what those guys sound like.
Well, if it means anything to you, man, you are his equal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, right. But thank you. I appreciate that.
Do you really think he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a month?
I think each one of his advertisers pays $10,000 to $20,000 a week. Just for his podcast, not to mention the ones on the network.
I don't know how this thing is, as you say, monetized. I guess that's his profession now. He has his Ringer website, right? That's his, I think.
Yeah, he makes all his money on that podcast.
Great. I mean, I have no feeling for how many people listen to it. I have no feeling for how many people listen to you. I know I do. I'm a loyal listener, Craig.
Well, our monthly listeners are in the thousands.
No.
But his are in the millions.
You have thousands of listeners for every podcast?
No, monthly listeners.
Monthly. So, like,
I have hundreds of listeners per episode.
You do. You do about 80 a month. That's
exactly. I just need to do a podcast every 30 seconds. You know, just spread out the episodes. And his isn't the only one though, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are not big fans of Barstool's Pardon My Take, but I think that podcast is hysterical. Do you listen to that one?
Never.
Okay. Well, that one, I think it's really funny because I think PFT Commenter is really funny, but they've never used a windscreen or a pop filter or any of that. So every time they use the P sound, it just screams and plasters my eardrums.
And a lot of these podcasts actually have people that sound like they call in via phone, not via their computer.
Yes.
And that sounds so crappy. Do you listen to any non-sports podcasts?
Yes, I never stopped listening to the 538 podcast after the election.
I listen to that.
I like Nate Silver. I think that one, although certainly biased, they do try and stick to the numbers more than just, screaming opinions. I like that one.
All of these are very, very biased. I mean, I listen to Slate, even though I'm not politically aligned with all of their views, but I just think there's some high-quality commentary on there. And then I listen to really nerdy ones that are just that are just fun.
Like what?
There's one that's called Lectures in History, and believe it or not, what it is, you could find it on Stitcher. And what you hear is either undergraduate at a fairly high level or graduate level discourses on any number of subjects. The quality is up and down. The sound quality is really up and down. But sometimes you'll hit on something that's so fabulous that I wish I was back in school. Just learning for learning's sake. So, for example, about a month ago, they had a really accomplished historian talking to, it may have been West Point, I don't know, but just talking about the specifics of what life was like as an American World War II fight a bomber. What your life was like when you were based in England, bombing Germany and coming back that same day while infantry was actually out on fronts. What the planes were like, what you felt, what you saw psychologically, physically, stuff like that. If it's the right thing, can for me be really fascinating. Just total learning for learning's sake. So
that seems really interesting. I like Innovation Hub.
Yeah.
The Vergecast. That's one of my favorite websites, and that one's really, really geeky and nerdy. But I like that. They'll dissect an Apple developer conference presentation.
Do you listen to Mark Maron?
Yes. Not every single episode, and I usually skip the first 15 minutes when
exactly when he's staring at his belly button and like talking, like he's entering into therapy all by himself.
I really love Mark, like as a person too, but I don't need his twice weekly monologue.
Right, but he'll hit on something and he'll have the right tone. When he interviewed Obama, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was just brilliant, because he has a way of breaking people down with his style.
I thought he was a little bit reserved and intimidated, but it was still interesting.
Not like we would be.
Oh no, I would definitely be, but again, if you've got the gravity of Mark Maron's listenership, I'd like to think that I'd be braver, but probably not. I'd probably be the same, easily intimidated person.
I thought he was fairly brave. I mean, I didn't want him to ask boxers or briefs or anything like that. I thought he was, as relaxed as he could be, and he asked very insightful questions. And he does that a lot with the right people. And then he has clunkers, and I just kind of find that charming, just because he's letting you listen to it anyway. So.
Yeah, well, and I didn't. One of his recent episodes, I tried to listen to Wheeler Walker Jr., and that guy was basically doing shtick. And that's like the antithesis of what I want to hear in a podcast. I want to hear somebody kind of breaking down who they actually are, as opposed to, pumping up some persona.
He replayed an old one after Robin Williams died.
That he did the same with Chris Cornell too.
I hadn't heard that one, but the Robin Williams one I thought was fabulous. And
yeah,
I'm not a huge Robin Williams fan. I recognize how brilliant he was. I just got tired of the same thing in so many movies, with just a few exceptions.
I just love Good Will Hunting.
I thought that was his best movie that I ever saw. I thought he was just fabulous in that. But when Mark Maron interviewed him, it was probably a good 10 years ago. It was just two comedians from the clubs talking, and that's the only time I've ever heard Robin Williams just talk like a normal person, without putting it all on and just going through that act and having to act, entertain everyone every second with that whole manic thing.
Yeah, let me do that manic stream of consciousness and tell a Viagra joke, and then weave in this and a voice and
talk faster and faster and faster. Whatever.
Which is impressive too, but yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like once you've seen it.
It was for the first 20 years. It was very impressive.
Yeah. Well, you don't seem overly broken up by the Cavaliers, so you survived the Cavaliers losing the championship.
I did. It wasn't unexpected, and my take is probably like most others. They weren't able to shed all their habits from the regular season. They have a ton of talent. I enjoyed watching them like crazy. I mean, we get to watch LeBron in his prime 81 games a year. And just that alone, no matter what they do, how far they go, that for me is just pure fan pleasure. But they were going to have to do certain things to beat the Warriors, and I don't think they did any of them. I mean, they were going to have to get contributions clear across the board. They were going to have to play defense like they hadn't all year. They were going to have to give full effort on every freaking loose ball. Plus, Kyrie was going to have to be brilliant. Plus, LeBron
every
was going
single
to have to
game,
be his
he was going to
playoffs.
have to be brilliant every game, and he wasn't.
Right, and I'm really glad they avoided the sweep, because I thought that would have just been a level of infamy that would have been kind of unfair to this team, just because of what the Warriors have going on. But when I watched, I didn't see Game 4 live. I saw it a couple days later, and when I watched it, I just thought to myself, the Warriors aren't quite giving full effort here. The Cavs played brilliantly. But if the Warriors had given the same effort they gave in Game 1, we wouldn't. I don't know that we would have. If we would have won that game, it would have been awfully close. And when I saw that, I know the town was so excited when we won that one game. But when I watched it dispassionately a couple days later, we were hitting everything, and they weren't quite acting like they were. And when they went back to Oakland, they were. So I don't think it would have taken a crazy series of events for us to win that series. And, there's a reason that teams have difficulty winning consecutive years, and not just injuries. I mean, there's a reason I think that the Cubs are playing crappy this year and the Indians are playing crappy this year. I think the long intensity of these playoff runs takes something out of these teams. And especially if they've won, it's really hard to gear up with, in that kind of competitive environment. I don't think the Cavs had it in them. They didn't demonstrate to me that they were going completely full bore intensity. They had little spurts, but they never seemed to be able to sustain it. And I'm not broken up, man. I
think this team has the talent to play well enough to beat Golden State. Not every time, but I think this team is well worth bringing back, 80-90% of it anyway, and building upon. I don't think there are any drastic moves. I think LeBron plus Kyrie plus Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson is a hell of a start for anybody in the NBA. It's as good of a 4 as anybody other than the Warriors.
For sure, but there's another aspect to this. What else are you going to do?
Yeah.
What's your alternative here? It's like
you could trade Kevin Love.
And what do you replace him with?
I think what you end up doing if you trade Kevin Love is you probably end up getting 2 lesser pieces. The Cavs are top heavy enough. They could use some specific skill sets in the middle. But I'm not so sure that actually makes you better in a matchup against the Warriors again.
I don't think it does, and I think Kevin Love played pretty darn well, except for Game 5. I think he played pretty darn well against the Warriors.
I think he did too.
And I think he's grown on me quite a bit. He does a lot of basketball things extremely well. I mean, if we're going to give it a 1 to 10 scale where LeBron is going to the rim is a 9.5. He's about one of the best ever, and Wes Unseld and Dennis Rodman are like 9.5s as far as rebounding. Kevin Love has a lot of 7s going across the board there. I think his inside game has atrophied a lot, but they don't let him do that because it clogs up the lane. But he does a lot of subtle basketball things well, and I know he's a very convenient, whipping boy here, but I don't. You lose that threat on the outside where they don't cover. They have to go out on the wing and cover him. You lose that rebounding. You lose his interior passing, which I think is really good. He makes very few mistakes in the flow of the game. He sees the court really, really well. And if you got to think about what you're going to replace him with. Assume we're thinking about replacing him with a shooting guard, an excellent shooting guard. But then who's rebounding for
But
you?
I guess my only point is that he is basically the only tradable asset, because you can't trade LeBron or Kyrie, and Tristan Thompson doesn't carry enough value, certainly after this finals performance. He's probably the one who disappointed the most.
I think he carries plenty of value for us, but what do you replace him with? Who's going to do?
And that's the thing.
Who's going to get 9 rebounds a game, and do all that in a team that's lacking intensity? What do you give up a lot when you give up Tristan Thompson? There's many nights he's the only one that comes to play, and I get he has an extremely I don't even want to say his offensive game is atrophied, because it was never there. I mean, he's just a stevedore back there. He's never going to have much touch.
Well, let's talk about this one, because this was something interesting Brian Windhorst was talking about today. This is not a report. It wasn't an actual suggestion by anybody with the Cavaliers or the Knicks, but a GM, another GM in the league, was talking to Brian and said, I don't know how any of this works out, but imagine a scenario like this, where the Cavaliers trade Kevin Love to, let's say, a team like the New York Knicks for Carmelo Anthony and the number 8 overall pick. So now...
Okay, so you're making me angry, Craig.
That's fine.
I don't want Carmelo. I do not want Carmelo. I mean, Carmelo is exactly, I think, what this team doesn't need. I mean,
okay. Well, hang on a second. Then don't use Carmelo. But you have to find a player that another team wants to dump enough that they would include a pick. The key is the number 8 pick.
Okay, but let me ask you this. LeBron has a window. We don't know when it's closing, but it's not open indefinitely. Right. He's going to continue playing above the rim. If he plays above the rim with as many minutes as he's playing for the next 3 years, he's entering Vince Carter territory. But Vince Carter has been on reduced minutes for years already. But he's going to go below the rim soon. If you have the number 8 pick, let's say it's a good pick. Let's say they pick wisely. Are they going to throw that guy into a serious playoff rotation for serious minutes right away? And if not, LeBron's on his way down when this number 8 is ready to, step up and play responsibly. Number 8 can be anything. Number 8 can be, it could be Klay Thompson, but it could also be Sergei Karasev or whatever his name was. I mean, you don't know what you're getting at number 8.
Well, everyone says this is one of the deepest drafts ever. So, I mean, I'm with you, though. I understand.
I just think when you talk about a cost-benefit analysis, I'm riding with Kevin Love, because you have a very finite number of years. It might be 3, might be 1. You could say, I'll take the number 8, and then if LeBron leaves, or if he ages out of true effectiveness, then at least we're set for the future. But I think, obviously none of us know, but I think what's probably going to happen is, if they bring back David Griffin and he does a competent job, I think LeBron is going to want to stay here, and we don't know what's going to happen with Golden State in a year or two. And I happen to think that LeBron is going to be an extremely effective below-the-rim player as he gets older. If he wants to continue playing, I see no reason why that guy won't be like late-stage Magic Johnson.
Well, and I don't want to be a total hater, but I'm going to probably come off like one anyway. But if I'm betting on players who are going to age gracefully, I actually think Kevin Love's game translates going forward, because he's got that outside shot. I don't think he's not a high flyer.
And he has no quicks or vertical to lose.
But whose game doesn't translate as they are 29 years old today and heading towards 32, 33, 34 years old is Steph Curry.
I think that's probably right, man.
And maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part because I hate everything about how that guy carries himself.
I never hated him until this year. Hate's kind of a strong word, but
I said I hate the way he carries himself. I was very particular in my wording because I didn't want to say I hate him.
It's sometimes these guys have a certain look about them that makes them very marketable. I don't really feel like getting into the racial aspect of it, but there's something about Steph Curry that's he's just kind of like every man in certain ways by his looks. He's an African American who's extremely light skinned.
He's got a baby face too.
He has a baby face. He's like very non-threatening. He
perpetually looks 23 years old.
Yeah, he's almost like one of these kind of like boy band guys, like even if you don't know basketball, my daughter's gonna really like him just looking at him. Actually, she loves Kevin Love, but that's a different story. But people, some of these guys get these reputations, but as it turns out, in the heat of competition, they're raving assholes, and I think he is. I mean,
so too.
The comments he's made over the last year, if LeBron would have thrown his mouthpiece at someone, if LeBron would have done a pseudo defecation on the Oracle floor, can you imagine the national response? I mean, the guy is there's just a lot of hubris going on there, and it's funny. I'm old enough to have remembered his dad playing, and his dad had a really sweet shot, but wasn't near that skill level like the son. But the father just seemed so humble and easygoing. I don't know what happened to the kid, man.
Well, and there's a lot of analysis going on, or people feeling themselves or feeling their feelings with regard to the Warriors, and the fact that they took one of the best teams in the NBA, probably the best team in the NBA, and Kevin Durant joined them. And so if you listen to 92.3 The Fan, whenever you hear like one of those national guys do that basically 30 seconds of opinion, it'll be like Phil Simms or somebody talking, or Boomer Esiason talking about whatever. There's a lot of desire to talk about exercising the demons and redemption and proving yourself, and it's very interesting. And I said on my podcast after the Cavaliers lost, after it was over, that as Cavaliers fans we can't be the ones to like really say it most loudly, but I'm not sure that any of those narratives actually fit this team, Kevin Durant. And I don't hate Kevin Durant. I don't hate the way he carries himself, but I'm not sure any of those narratives actually fit. What do you make of? Do you think about that stuff at all?
I don't. Guys like Boomer, it's just shtick. It's like, have a
right,
take.
but he's not the only one. He was just an example.
Yeah. No, I understand, but it's that style you're talking about. But there's only 4 narratives, and I'm just making that up. I mean, there's only a few sports narratives. Guy riding high, arrogant guy gets laid low. Guy, under all this pressure comes through. Guy that everybody's been crapping on rises up and redemption. And there's only a few that are available in sports. And this whole thing of a great player going to an already great team doesn't fit in any of these narratives. So they're going to say what they're going to say. And the truth of the matter is there was pressure on Durant. It was completely self-imposed because he decided to go to this team. Then if they didn't win a championship, then people would have been all over him as a failure. I don't dislike him, and I don't dislike what he did. What I mean by that is going to the Warriors. These guys are free agents, and they should go where they're happy. He didn't take the last dollar, as far as I recall. He actually took, we're talking about a lot of dollars, but he didn't go after the last buck. He wanted to win, and he should go wherever he's happy.
Right, but did he actually prove anything?
I don't think he said that he proved anything.
No, I understand that, but at the same... But hang on a second. So what you were saying is that there are only a certain number of narratives, and I looked it up while you were talking because I remember this story about they asked a computer to identify all the possible narratives, and the computer identified there are only 6. You get number 1, rags to riches. Number 2,
are we talking now all narratives, like
all
we're talking
narratives,
movie narratives,
and books and stories.
Loner comes into
so let me read them. Rags to riches, riches to rags, man in a hole, where you fall and then you rise. Icarus, you rise and then you fall. Cinderella, rise then fall then rise again. And Oedipus, fall, rise, fall. And that's it. There's 6. But my point is that anybody who tries to fit this into some kind of a redemption narrative for Kevin Durant is, it's fine. I don't hate Kevin Durant. I don't even necessarily. I get why he did what he did, but let's not pretend like he proved the haters wrong. He redeemed himself.
Okay, I hear you. I agree, and I would tell you that I would agree with you totally, and it would bother me as much as it sounds like it bothers you if the Cavs hadn't won the championship in 2016. That has provided me with an emotional buffer that
So you're saying you can't be rational. Got it.
No. I'm saying I am rational. I'm saying I'm not going to irrational. It's harder for me to irrationally hate in this sport. If you give me something with the Cubs, and I will be there with you. If the Indians had won the World Series last year, nothing about that's said about the Cubs. If the Cubs had would win this year, then nothing would have bothered me. Fine, do what you're going to do. I just don't. That stuff about the Warriors just doesn't bother me as much. But just if we could just close the loop on what we started talking about as far as what the Cavs should do. I think that some stuff could happen to the Warriors in 2017, 2018. They could have injuries. They could be fed up with going to so many consecutive finals. They could be worn out as a team. They could lose the edge. And I don't think the Cavs should do anything but try as best as they can to get rid of the dead wood that they picked up that didn't really contribute. I think there's a few players there. I'm not saying they, in retrospect, they shouldn't have done it. But the guys that seem to have nothing much left in the tank, they're going to have to jettison if they want a chance to beat the Warriors next year. I mean, they're going to have. I don't know that they could bring back Darren Williams. I don't know that they can.
But
do
they're
that.
they're in an interesting spot with Kyle Korver, where they almost have to sign him because otherwise they don't have any asset.
Yeah, I think that's right. And Kyle Korver, when he played for Atlanta, always struck me as a guy who died a little bit in the moment, at least when we played him. He did not play his best ball.
I agree with that.
Those open shots were not falling. He did not react well to the playoff pressure. He played better with the Cavs up until the finals, and maybe even at his relatively advanced age, he'd play better in the finals next year. Just because he's now gotten a taste of it. He doesn't seem to me to be a particularly mentally strong guy, not like JR, who could come out and just doesn't seem to.
But let's take it through its paces. Like the Cavaliers probably have to sign Kyle Korver to a 2-year deal somewhere around $35 million.
I don't think I'd do that, man.
Do you not? I don't think you have a choice.
What?
Because otherwise you can't you can't replace him, and if you sign him, you can trade him by December. But you don't have anything to trade if you don't sign some of these guys that you brought in.
All right, I just got a little sticker shock listening to that.
I know. Well, imagine how Dan Gilbert feels because he's got the luxury tax and the repeater tax, so that $1 is going to cost him.
Why do we think Kyle Korver would get $17 million a year? Why do we think that's his market value?
I mean, look at what other people have gotten.
At his age for a.
That's why he's only going to get 2 years.
I don't know, man. That just seems high. But what do I know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing, and I'm really The whole David Griffin thing is creeping me out a little bit. I don't understand what the issue is.
I think that one will just get done.
If it doesn't, then I'm going to feel similarly to how about Dan Gilbert as how I felt a couple of years ago. Dan Gilbert, this town freaking loves him because of the letter. I mean, they love him because of that. Where everybody sees, a guy standing up for the common man and blah blah blah. I see a guy with a self-made guy who's intemperate and was personally offended by the whole thing. And that was the essence of what we saw there. And I think that's the kind of stuff that happens to him. And I don't know that he would be such a great owner, but for the fact that LeBron came back, I see him capable of kind of blowing this. And I really hope it doesn't happen. I kind of thought that when he got rid of his or took some power apparently away from his buddies, his partial owners there, I thought that must have had something to do with David Griffin's role on the team and maybe Griffin objecting that these guys were in his face all the time, but maybe not. So anyways, I just hope they get that done.
I think they will. I mean, but just to the point when we're talking about how much money Kyle Korver's worth, I mean, CJ McCollum plays for the Blazers. He's a shooting guard. $25.7 million will be his cap hit in 2018. Yeah,
but Craig, he's way young.
Hang on. It gets crazier. Chandler Parsons, $24 million. Harrison Barnes, $24 million.
Oh.
Nicholas Batum, $24 million. Rudy Gobert, $22.7 million. I mean, a lot of these guys are better. Victor Oladipo, $21 million. So you're telling me...
I wanted them to draft Victor Oladipo.
Yeah, well, everybody did in hindsight, that's for sure.
No, I did before.
But in hindsight, too. Have you ever even heard of Tyler Johnson?
Never.
He plays for the Heat. He makes $18.9 million next year.
I heard Zach Lowe mention him on his podcast. By the way, that's a podcast I really like.
Yeah, he does a great job. Yeah. So anyway, it's I think the world kind of left us by. The NBA's salary world just doesn't even make sense anymore. Luol Deng makes $18 million from the Lakers. It just
how much do they pay? Do they pay Mozgov right now?
It's like 17, I think.
And the dude, I think it's closer to 20, but the dude can't play. He can't play at all.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Why wasn't I born 7 feet tall, Craig? That's what I want to know. I heard a statistic a few years ago that something like 17% of all American-born males, who are 17% of all 7-footers, have played or play in the NBA. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. It's like if you're 7 feet tall, you have a 1 in 6 shot of playing in the NBA.
I mean, your path has pretty much been decided for you. By the way, Mozgov signed a 4-year, $64 million contract.
So was that 16?
Yeah.
God.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Browns a little bit.
Right.
We don't know exactly which team is going to suit up and take the field. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We don't know a lot of things about the Browns, even though we've seen a lot of their offseason moves in their draft and everything else. I kind of feel like this is maybe a 3-win team if we're lucky.
I would take it. That's an improvement, right?
You would take it as an improvement. I think
in this town, does it matter? People are going to be writing and talking about the Browns. There is no downside to owning this team, man. I mean,
did you have any opinions on Brock Osweiler? I mean, I'm assuming you saw my takes on it. That dude's a turd. He will always be a turd. You might as well just cut him.
I saw that. Honestly, I don't remember any game that I've watched him play. I mean, I know who he is.
I watched a couple Denver games. I watched a couple Houston games.
I must have seen him play for Denver, and I don't remember. I did not see him play for Houston, where apparently he had a hard time. But I didn't think he was here to actually compete for a job, a starting job for sure. I thought it was a kind of draft pick move. So I don't know. What I'm hearing from, if you could believe Mary Kay Cabot, Sean Kaiser's looking like a 6'4" quarterback who could run a little bit in camp and hasn't shown up drunk or anything like that. So they seem to be giving a lot of reps to him.
If you counterbalance it with what Zach Jackson's been saying about how often the ball seems to be on the ground in 7-on-7s.
With Kaiser?
With all of the quarterbacks. We are in for a disaster and a half. Because at this point in the offseason, with the level of competition being so low, the Browns should be moving the ball. And the ball should never be hitting the ground. Quarterback should be hitting receivers. Receivers should be catching the ball. And that's it.
They don't have a quarterback. They don't have any receivers.
They certainly don't. And they don't get to show off their handoff game in the in OTAs.
This is what I want. I want the team, particularly the defense, to play with some energy, even if they're running the wrong way. I would like to see some. You ever watch little kids play soccer?
Have I watched obsessively for the last 2 months? Yes.
All right, so that kind of it's kind of like like watching that old, I forgot what they called that old football game on the board, the electronic thing.
Telematics.
They used to go kind of in circles, or just move quick, man. And maybe a ball will hit you in the hands and you'll have a pick six. But just don't waltz with the offensive lineman. Run full speed somewhere. Run with some enthusiasm. Make a mistake.
Well, and I think you'll see Jamie Collins do just that. I think you'll see Myles Garrett do that. Although, is he hurt again already?
Apparently.
I mean,
I love this.
I don't want to paint him as Courtney Brown yet, but holy shit.
Yeah, right. Look, he made it almost through the OTAs without getting an MRI. That's not bad. Meanwhile, last year's first-round pick, the guy they traded down twice to grab because he was the best receiver at the draft. I mean, not only is he – I mean, you look at him and he gets nicked up. Not only is he nicked up, he doesn't appear to be a skilled receiver at this point. And, I get it. It wasn't a deep receiver class. That's fine. But how do you parlay the second pick in the draft into Corey Coleman? I don't get it. Honestly.
Yeah. Well, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for Browns fans to say that the foot ankle injury, it doesn't matter this year. If Garrett misses the whole year, it doesn't matter. We want him in year 2, 3, 4.
It matters so much. The reason it matters is because he is the biggest, strongest dude on the team, or at least he's supposed to be.
Yep.
He is supposed to be the rock. He is supposed to be the guy that the center kind of comes up from his stance and points at, and the quarterback points at, and everybody's pointing at, and they're
who tortures right tackles as he grabs Ben Roethlisberger's jersey.
Right, they're calling audibles because of him. He has to appear on the field on a regular basis. He's going to get the crap beat out of him 6 times a year by our division rivals. And he's got to be out there. He's got to be the rock and the impact player on the team. He's the first freaking pick in the draft. He can't be any less. So it really matters if he misses a year. And who's the guy that?
But I'm right. You know that if he misses significant time, some in our brethren will say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We don't need him this year anyway.
We'll get a high pick next year.
Oh,
just a better pick for next year. Think of the assets that would give us if he's out for a year. Think of the assets we get if Corey Coleman can't play at all. More assets, man. I mean,
I'm so tired of assets in the future.
Right. So I'm hoping Greg Williams gives an identity. Oh my gosh, my neighbor, wherever he is, it's 9:07. He is still mowing his lawn.
I'm just hoping my wife put the kids to bed so that I can miss bedtime completely.
I'll stall. I'll go into the stall, the pod stall. What was I saying? Corey Coleman. Something about Corey Coleman.
And missing time and assets for the future.
Yeah. I mean, they have to play. I'm hoping that Greg Williams will get these guys playing hard for entertainment purpose only, even if there's not going to be any wins. And what I really also don't like, as long as we're just kind of venting here about the Browns, is I don't know why Hugh Jackson, the head coach, is an offensive genius. Can we see that he's an offensive genius before we acclaim him as offensive genius?
He certainly struggled at times with basics of game management and timeouts last year.
Because everybody decided he was a good head coach because he was a competent offensive coordinator. How many times in this town do we have to see that those are different skill sets? Why do we assume, he was really good as an offensive coordinator? Then people say, he went 8-8 for the Raiders. Well, great. That's fine. That doesn't mean he's a competent head coach. I mean, he also was canned, and maybe it was unjust, and that's fine. But I don't know that he's a good head. Can we wait for someone to be a good head coach until we acclaim him as a good head coach? We just want to acclaim people and pretend that the ship is ripe. Mostly, I think, because we just can't stand the idea of more turmoil, of more turnover. But I'm very. We had this whole discussion, I think, on Waiting for Next Year. At some point last year, I think it was maybe one of your pieces. When did you turn on the Browns? And I just something has clicked in me that I think Ray Farmer finally did it for me. I'm way more objective than I used to be, and I get mad at myself if I start looking at these guys and thinking that they're good before they're good in a regular season game. Until they do that, I mean, what are we talking about? We're just making it up.
It's funny, and this is like part of it is just because like my life got busy, but I don't really cover training camp anymore just because, well, first of all, it's because my life got busy, but also, it's like by going there, I think I almost got dumber. Like I would, you see Browns on Browns action and you start looking for reasons to believe rather than like objectively checking things out. And you're not seeing anything of note. We've seen entire preseasons, specifically Brandon Weeden showing off in a preseason where it translated to absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Right. You look at the second preseason game, or even the third where the regulars are playing, but they're playing at 3/4 speed. Quarterbacks always, they almost always do well in those situations because they're not giving you the real defenses. And so, especially a quarterback who's dumb as a rock and can't read a defense and has a good arm may look really good in the third preseason game. And it, as you say, it means nothing. I went out to training camps for years. I went out to Lakeland all the time, which I thought was more fan-friendly than Berea. Went out to Berea a few times. I don't have the desire to do that anymore. I enjoyed it. I'm a nerd enough to really enjoy watching the defensive back drills because I think oftentimes the defensive backs are the best athletes on the team, and I get a little awestruck just watching them.
They're the best athletes on the field unless Josh Gordon's out there.
Unless Josh Gordon's out there.
And I didn't mean to make that a punchline. That dude was amazing to watch in practice.
Yeah, but going out to training camp gave me some insights that I wouldn't have otherwise had into the team. Like I saw Josh Gordon his first year here where he was out of shape, and you could see him pouting when he was getting yelled at by a receivers coach. You could just see him with bad body language, everything they talked about. But I just don't care anymore. They're gonna have to make me care very deeply about them. Really, the ball's in their court at this point, or the whatever analogy you want to use. I just it's really hard for me to get excited when there's through various administrations here. There's just so much incompetence. So something in me is broken. I'm going to watch them. I have a few warm fuzzies about their draft picks. I wanted them to draft Jabril Peppers. I wanted them to draft Malik Hooker a lot. But it looks like at least some of the guys they got are physically dominant. And even if they can't play football, that's better than being non-physically dominant and unable to play football, as we've seen before. So maybe. But let's see them play and see what happens. And I'm not going to get. I know we have one of our great regular commenters is doing a countdown to the first preseason game.
It's one of my favorite things. But for those who don't actually read the site, who only listen to the podcast, he finds a jersey number to match the number of days, and it's every day. It's the best. And then on Mondays he plays catch up.
And it's whimsical. It's so funny, and I assume it's sort of self-mocking.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so much tongue in cheek, and yeah. I think that's one of the most interesting things is that the people in the comment section have gotten to know each other and been around each other for so many years and so long that you don't need the sarcasm tag anymore. Everyone just kind of knows where everybody else is coming from. Right.
The other thing I like, and it hasn't happened in a while, is when an interloper comes in with a bad attitude.
Oh yeah.
And gets attacked by everybody, and oftentimes in the most deliciously snarky way.
I think those people just live on Twitter now.
I think so, but I kind of like it that they don't usually come back, and other people have had their comment behavior modified just by the pack. The pack coming around them and snipping at them and threatening them.
And we even seem to get along with our negative Nancys. I love it.
Yeah. It's fun, and even some of our positive Nancys. What if a negative person is a Nancy? What's a positive Peter? There's a few relentlessly positive Peters that kind of I'm so sarcastic that it kind of makes me sick, but they're very lovable in their own way, so it makes it fun.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a pretty good place to leave it. We don't have to talk about the Indians today, do we? We got so much time.
No, just let's wait until they've revealed their full personality, and then we'll rip them or something, or laud them. We'll see what happens. I still have hope.
Yeah, well, as soon as Abe Almonte gets back, he's going to start stroking the ball again.
All right, Craig.
Yeah, that's a great place to leave it. Thanks so much, Harv. It was always good to catch up, and even though the Cavaliers didn't win, I'm kind of with you. I'm not overly, even as much as I think the narrative's really dumb, I'm not passionate about it.
I slept well. I mean, I had the bad feeling the last 2 minutes when it was, obvious that it was all over. I didn't want to watch the Warriors celebrate, but I slept well that night, and I didn't feel an ounce of the kind of the really bad feeling, the gut. I didn't feel any gut punch at all the next day. I was kind of relieved that it was over. I just, it seemed like a fait accompli to me.
I got my lame bedtime back, nice and early.
Right.
All right, man. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.